Welcome to another segment of POPA On Point. I'm Brian Moriguchi, President of the Professional Peace Officers Association. I'm joined today by Jim McDonald, who's the Chief of Police of Long Beach and the leading candidate for sheriff. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks, Brian.
This segment, we're going to focus on the jails. Jim, I know you were appointed to a position on the County Commission on Jail Violence, CCJV. Tell me what you learned from that experience.
You know, having worked alongside the Sheriff's Department for over 3 decades, when I got appointed to the commission by Supervisor Kanabe, I thought that I would be going in and I really wouldn't be learning anything I didn't know. And kind of naive, to be honest, that I thought I knew the organization as much as an outsider could know the organization. I was a fan of the organization, and I went in and I hoped that the value I would add would be to look out for the safety of the deputies in the jail environment and to be able to bring a policing perspective to the equation, whereas the other members of the panel were not from policing in general terms, primarily retired federal judges, a civil rights leader, and an expert on the jails. So I thought that I'd be able to at least add some value to the equation, but didn't believe that I would be surprised by what I heard. And after hearing testimony from inmates, from deputies, from doctors, lawyers, nurses, psychologists, chaplains, and other stakeholders, I was shocked to think that the kind of behavior that was in some cases promoted, in other cases tolerated within the jail environment was shocking to me, that 21st century Los Angeles, that this type of behavior was going on, and that nobody was being held accountable for it. So the more we got into it, I think the more that it got everybody's attention that this should not be happening, and we need to do something right away to ensure that it isn't. And so in looking at that, what I did learn from the testimony we heard was some of the things we've talked about previously: the pay-to-play, the favoritism, the nepotism, and in some cases the corruption and brutality that was either promoted or at the very least tolerated. And so in looking at that, there was a demand, a need for immediate change, and that change needed to be very clearly communicated in order for the organization to be able to start restoring credibility with the community and with the policing community nationwide as well.
I'm going to read a section out of the CCJV report when you talk about the accountability or corruption. Let me just read this out of here and then we'll talk about it. The troubling role of Under Sheriff Tanaka cannot be ignored. Not only did he fail to identify and correct problems in the jails, he exacerbated them. The Commission learned about his ill-advised statements and decisions from a wide array of witnesses and sources. Over the course of several years, the Undersheriff encouraged deputies to push the legal boundaries of law enforcement activities and created an environment that discouraged accountability and misconduct. His repeated statements that deputies should work in an undefined gray area contributed to a perception by some deputies that they could use excessive force in the jails and that their aggressive behavior would not result in discipline. That's a very, very strong statement, and for us inside, we want to be clear that there's one jail primarily involved. We had 8 jails at the time, and really only one got out of control. There was some use of force in the jail that was right next to it, but this was an example of empowering deputies to behave badly, and that there was no accountability there. What are your thoughts about that statement, in particular, about the Undersheriff?
That was a very strong statement, and one that a lot of thought went into, and certainly one that was not made lightly. From the testimony that we heard from dozens of people that supported that contention, that there was a tone set by the Undersheriff that I got your back, work in the gray, people don't understand the environment you're operating in, basically we'll take care of whatever comes up. And then I look back now on it, very, very troubling, but I look back now in the position we're in today, and we have 20 deputies indicted. 20 deputies who came on the job to do good, to provide for their family, and to be able to be helpful to the community overall as a result of their position. And I look at those 20 deputies now and their families, their lives turned upside down, their families are in jeopardy, and their freedom in jeopardy. And 6 of those deputies currently convicted, one more in trial right now. And you know, did they come in with a predisposition to act in that way, or was it the leadership or the failure of leadership that allowed or encouraged them to act in such a way that nobody had their back? They did what they did for whatever reason, you know, following what they believed to be the dictates of their superior officers, and ended up in a position where now everything that they worked for their whole life is in jeopardy.
You're being overly nice in this, by the way, and so I'm going to flat out say it, that how I feel about those 6 who were convicted, they were following orders, and that doesn't excuse them for their behavior. I'm not justifying their behavior, but the orders came from high up in the sheriff's department, and unfortunately these people were doing what probably 90% of the employees of the sheriff's department would have followed the orders, because that's what we are, a paramilitary organization, and they followed the orders of very high up executives of this department, and sadly they are being held accountable for the orders that were given to them, while nobody above them has yet been held accountable. And that's very disturbing to my members. I know several of them are our members, and we know them. I know them personally to be very good people who were doing the job that they were told to do. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not making excuses for their behavior, because that's up to a court to decide. But without a doubt, those orders came from higher up in the organization, which is the flaw in this whole process that they're going.
Yeah, you know, I look at it, and it's tragic for the individuals, for their families, for the organization, and for policing, for all of us in the field, in the profession, to see what happened and the way it happened. But it's not over yet, and I think that we will see more to come in this.
Let me ask you about the dual track, because that was a proposal in the CCJV report, and Sheriff Baca went ahead and implemented it. In fact, he said he'll implement all the recommendations. We have some serious concerns with the dual track as proposed by Baca, in that we've seen this already before, where we had a separation between custody and the rest of the department,
right,
and what that did to morale and what that did to the efficiency of the department, and bifurcating it to 2 separate groups. Why do you believe that this dual track, or do you believe, I assume you believe in it because it's in the report, but why do you believe that that's a good path to go down, or do you believe that it could be modified in some way, maybe into a hybrid or completely 2 separate divisions? Completely?
Yeah, you know, certainly as we get into this, there's nuances that I, as an outsider, am not aware of. There's past practices and history that you have that I'm not aware of, and would certainly love to hear more about that, because there's a lot of lessons to be learned from what was done previously. One of the big things, though, I think, is the way that custody has been viewed within the culture of the organization. In some cases as a dumping ground, or at least as a place where you went as the new person, whether it was out of the academy or whether it was newly promoted, that you went to the jails to do your time before you could get out. And then if you got in trouble in the field, oftentimes you went to the jails as, you know, somewhere to put you for the rest of your career. And so the message that sends to the organization and to the public is that this is a dumping ground for the organization. That is terrible. This is one of your highest liability, most important components of the organization, and we're treating it in a fashion that if we were a business, we'd be bankrupt. That makes no sense at all. And when you look at the nature of the job in the jail, the complexity, the level of danger, and I could go on and on. I'm just trying to explain what a difficult job that is. To treat that as anything less than a specialty, something that we should highly value the job that's being done there under very, very difficult circumstances every day, to me makes no sense at all. So the goal would be to create an environment and a system where we value the specialty of custody and we treat it accordingly, and not use it as a place we put people that can't get along elsewhere. If somebody can't get along, if somebody's not doing the job, we don't move them, we deal with them. And that's the way you maintain good morale, that we don't move our problem people. And the whole idea of somebody wanting to be a police officer or a deputy sheriff in Los Angeles County, many people who look at the various departments and they weigh the cost and benefits to each and put together a matrix, and they look at the sheriff's department and they talk to their friends and they say, you could do up to 7 years in the jail when you get out of the academy. Okay, I'm taking that one off my list. So some of the best and the brightest in the field, in the county, coming in at entry level decide they're not even going to give the sheriff a chance. And to me, that's an opportunity cost that we can never recover. So to be able to change it so that we have the ability to be able to hire people who want to work in the custody environment, who value that, and see that the organization values that, and to be able to have a career path when they come in that is meaningful, that they can work hard and be rewarded for their hard work and dedication. It takes a special type of person to do that job well, and they're out there. We just need to find them and recruit them, but to treat them well so that when they get in the organization, they see that there is a lot of value to what they bring. I think that if we look and go back, you know, when you mentioned that we've tried this before, I would wonder if when we tried it before, it failed as a result of the way that we treated custody. You know, the disrespect that the culture had for custody may have impacted the ability for that system to have been successful under those terms. So I'd want to take a fresh look at that. Certainly not closed down to any ideas, and I'd love to be able to learn from those who've experienced this before. But I certainly would want to do so in the context of changing the environment in there to one of professionalism, one where we value our employees, and that we take a look at this in a very different light than it appears it's been looked at at least in recent years.
Several years ago, POPA generated a POPA plan on the custody issues that were brought up. And one of the things we talked about was the term we used is catchers and keepers.
Right.
The ones who want to be there, like our custody assistants, who that's their sole job, and deputies who return to the jails and want to work in the jails,
right.
We looked at them as the keepers. That's what they want to do, is be keepers and maintain the security of a jail. The catchers are the ones who want to be street cops and go out there and catch bad guys. And we were putting them in from the academy into the jails where they didn't want to be.
Right.
That's not their goal, and like you said, they're spending 7 years in there. Our plan actually proposed that those deputies coming out of the academy do 1 year and then go straight out to patrol. Would you support a plan like that, or maybe even a full separation where we have a separate academy for custody, separate academy for patrol?
Yeah, you know, I like the idea for the deputies. I like the idea of everybody going to the same academy. Everybody's a field deployable deputy. Everybody has the opportunity down the road to be able to lateral back and forth from the custody environment to any other environment within the organization. I would entertain and look forward to hearing about other options on the table in looking at you know, the value of that component of the organization to the overall health of the organization and reputation of the organization. I don't think we can overstate that. We'll be judged based on our weakest link, wherever that is, and certainly for something as important as the custody environment, we need to do everything we can to make it as good as it possibly can be.
Sheriff Baca, when he implemented the dual track, required a 5-year commitment. Now, in law enforcement, 5 years at any one assignment is a long time to be stuck into a particular job. And we felt that that was too long of a time to force somebody into a job. And they may deteriorate after a certain period
Sure.
of time as far as the quality of work,
Right.
if they're unhappy there. Would you entertain, revisit the time commitment? I understand why they want it. They want longevity.
Right.
But an unhappy person or someone who doesn't want to be there, longevity is not necessarily
Right.
going to improve the jail environment.
Well, I would revisit it, and I think the key to this whole thing is that we force anybody into any position. Ideally, we create an environment where people want to work in, where it's a sought-after job, and I think that can be done. And so that it's not an issue of you're required to maintain a certain amount of time in there, but rather you choose to work there, and you choose to work there for as long as that it's that you find it to be a good place to work, that it's meaningful, that you're doing good work, and that you're being rewarded for the performance that you're putting forward.
We have a 1-year commitment just for operational reasons. A 1-year commitment to any unit that you go to, right. That you commit to the 1 year. Would you be open to considering people being there for the 1 year and then moving on if they so choose?
You know, I'd like to take a look at all of our options. I look at even the dual track system as was recommended by CCJV. There's going to be a long period of time to be able to get to where was outlined in that regard. So to be able to have an interim where somebody works as a deputy, they work in that custody environment for a period of time, whether it's a year, whether it's 2 years, until we get up to speed on having a dual track, if that's what it turns out to be. I'd want to remain flexible in that because the deployment needs will dictate how long somebody spends in there, but certainly my goal would be if deputies are assigned there that didn't sign on to be there, that we minimize the amount of time in there and get them to doing a job that they enjoy doing, that they look forward to doing, and that was part of their goals, their career goals. And I feel the same way with the deputies or the custody assistants or whatever that term will be used down the road. That people, they feel that they're in a position that they're there because they want to be there, not because they signed a contract to be in any one position. Job satisfaction is key in doing the job well, and we need to be able to provide opportunities for people to have an environment where they feel they're making a difference, and that's really what morale is all about.
I'm sure the deputies would appreciate getting out in 1 year versus 7, because career-wise, we're always looking down the road on our career. 7 years versus 1 year, that's 6 years lost in your career where you could have become a training officer, could have become a detective, could have promoted to sergeant. So it'll make a huge difference to their careers.
And the whole idea there that you mentioned, and is the culture of the organization, that's 6 years lost. That time spent in the jail was viewed as time lost, and that should not be the case. That should be a valued assignment where if you choose to work in there for X amount of years, that every day that you worked there was not lost. It was a valuable part of running the organization and supporting the organizational goals.
Mm-hmm. Let me switch over to the custody assistants that you mentioned. One of the recommendations in the CCJV report was to use the custody assistants in a greater capacity in the jail. Now, we've seen this for a long time. We've seen them go from literally pushing buttons in a booth to now interacting with the inmates and doing much more, and they are fully capable of doing that job. It sounds like the CCJV reviewed that and also believes that they're capable of doing more. Would you support an increased use of custody assistants in the jail?
Yeah, I definitely want to take a look at that, and to be able to bring some professionals in to look at that, see what's being done in LA County jails, and see what's being done nationwide in other jails, and to be able to get that balance. The main goal is to be able to operate as efficiently as we can without jeopardizing the safety of our employees or the safety of the inmates. So what that balance ends up being long term, I couldn't tell you at this point, but I'm certainly open to look at what the options are, but it would involve working with all of the stakeholders involved, the unions that are involved, as well as the management and the individuals that are working in the environment that we're talking about.
I'm going to give a shameless plug to the CA since that's who I represent, along with other members. But what we found is that in looking at problems within the jails, that administrative investigations, deputies, 4.9 per 100 deputy sheriffs were under an administrative investigation in a year's time versus a 2.9 per 100 CAs. We believe very strongly that our CAs, and I go back to the catchers and keepers, that they are there for a specific reason, which is to maintain security, and they understand their jobs, their job function as a jailer. And it seems to me that they are probably probably the most important component in our jails as far as maintaining security, because that's what they do all the time. When I hired on, we had a different classification called correction officers, and I know when I hired on as a young deputy, I turned to them. Those people, that was their career. They knew exactly what they were doing in the jails and how to do it and maintain security. I was simply there for a short period of time to learn about the criminals before I went to patrol. So they're very advantageous to have those CAs in there. So I hope you will support the CAs in the future, and we've already talked about potential career track for them and bonus positions. So I'm glad to hear that you support that as well.
No, thank you, Brian. Yeah.
We all know that the jails are a very violent place for both inmates and staff. Just by the nature of the people that we're housing there, we have murderers, we have rapists, we have gang members, and they're all concentrated into a small environment. Men's Central Jail was built many, many years ago, and it was not designed to house this level of criminals, especially with AB 109 putting state prisoners into our jail system. There's also an issue for us about the safety component for our staff with the structure of Men's Central Jail, but also diseases that are in that building because it's been a closed environment for so long. I realize that the Board of Supervisors are talking about tearing down this jail and building a new one, but there is a lot of opposition to building a new jail. And I think that's a misnomer. We're not building a new jail. We're building a replacement jail.
Right.
What are your thoughts about the design of a new jail?
Yeah, I think it's critical that we're going to build a jail that's going to cost the taxpayers a lot of money, and that we're going to have in service for the next 50 years plus, probably. So we need to reflect on this in a way that we're developing opportunities to be able to have an environment that is as good as it can be for as many years as we can get service out of it. And I think the issues that need to be addressed there are the issue of dealing with the mentally ill, where 15 to 20% of the people in the jail environment are there because of their mental illness. To look for opportunities to be able to provide community-based mental health clinics so that those individuals aren't incarcerated, that they are being treated at the local level. Also opportunities to be able to reduce the number of people in the jail environment. Look at you know, the opportunity where we just have taken as a given the bail system the way it is, where we don't do generally an assessment on who's a threat to the community as far as getting bail and who can make it and who can't. You know, and I know that's supposed to be measured into the whole bail schedule piece, but it doesn't really capture it. If you're a member of a gang or a criminal organization, you're going to make bail because there's those out there to support you, whereas somebody who may be less of a threat to the community may not be able to make that, and we're going to then keep them in custody until their trial at great expense to all of us. And so there's opportunities, I think, and with the advancements of technology to look at GPS ankle bracelets or monitoring systems that would allow us to be able to keep track of people without necessarily keeping them in custody. I think the pushback politically, there is not the will to build additional jail space or prison space within the state. So we need to be as smart as we can about who we house and make sure that we're in a position to be able to say that those that provide the greatest threat to the community, we keep incarcerated. For those that we can possibly screen without jeopardizing the public safety, that we look at other options for them. But in looking at the jail itself, I think that we're in a position now moving forward where we have the ability to be able to bring subject matter experts together from a number of fields to be able to look at the environment that we're going to create, and is it as good as it can be? Is it what we'll look back on 20 years from now and say, you know what, given the information they had at that period in time, they built quite a facility, and I think that opportunity is here. But we can't do it in isolation.
A good example of if we don't take care of this problem is what we're seeing now with the breaking of all these water mains, right, all over the city of Los Angeles. At some point, you got to put the money in to fix those old structures. Otherwise, you're going to pay for it later down the road. We honestly believe that a new jail would be safer for the inmates as well as safer for the staff.
Yeah, I think anybody who's been through Men's Central Jail would agree that it's time for a new facility. And what that facility looks like will be probably markedly different than the current one does. The configuration that's put together will determine the level of safety for the inmates as well as all of the employees within the environment.
Let me talk about the use of force in our jails. The CCJV was very critical, and to be quite honest, I took some exception to how it was written, where there appears to be an assumption that this excessive force problem is systemic. And Andre Barat, the AUSA, made that very comment, that it was a systemic problem. The reality, my reality at least, is that we had a problem primarily in one jail, and that was because an executive basically told people in that jail, gave them the green light to behave badly, and held back the supervision and told them to let them do what they're going to do. When you guys were at CCJV and you looked at the other jails, the other 7 jails that were in existence, the use of force was not as problematic as this one jail by a long shot. It was really out of control. The point I guess I'm trying to make is that the vast majority of our people working in those jails were doing the right thing. It was just because somebody dictated that one facility get out of control. How, as a politician, I hate to use that term because I know a lot of people don't like politician, but how do you address that? Because I know that a lot of people in the public think we have a huge problem in the jails of excessive force. Yet internally we know that that's not as big a problem as it's being perceived. how do you reconcile what the public thinks, and then how do you deal with the employees who will take great exception to harsh punishments and
Right.
restriction? And by the way, we're seeing that already, where deputies are not using force, not even using proper force, because they're afraid.
Yeah, there's always that potential for a chilling effect, that people are afraid to engage if they feel that they're not understood, and that the people judging their careers, you know, from a disciplinary standpoint, don't understand. So they, you know, it's like in the field we see depolicing in some cities where the officers don't engage because they don't feel supported. That's certainly detrimental to the organization and to the good operation and image of the Sheriff's Department, and we don't want to get there. The officers and deputies need to feel supported, that if they're doing the right thing in the right way, that they're going to be supported. And if there are training issues that need to be addressed, then they will be addressed from that standpoint. But for those who feel that they're going to be brutal, that they're going to be, that it's going to be covered up, that they can do whatever it is they please and work in the gray, that they need to be very cognizant of the fact that that will not be tolerated at any level, and that they won't be wearing that badge very long if that's what they think they're going to be able to get away with. The whole issue of the structure of the jail, of the facility itself, is an issue that needs to be addressed. But certainly you can't downplay the role that leadership, supervision, management play in the day-to-day operations, the good running of a jail or any other environment. And something as critical and as complex as the LA County jail environment, where as many people come together in one place, most, I would say, who would not get along with each other on the street, that's a difficult environment to be able to manage. So it's all the more critical that on the department side, that things are being run, organized, that it's being done in a fashion that's fair and equitable to all of the employees, and that we're looking out for each other's safety, and that the individuals in the jail, the inmates, are being monitored appropriately, and that their safety is being looked out for as well. So it's that balance that we have to continue to strike, but I can't overstate the importance of solid supervision, management, and leadership that plays in the role of running a complex environment like this. Facilities definitely play a role, but probably secondary to the people part of the business.
One of the things in the POPA plan that we recommended, and I'll just read it right out of our plan, the county should immediately conduct a classification study and authorize the creation of a new custody jailer series, renaming our custody assistants to custody jailer. This new classification will more accurately reflect the duties of LASD civilian jailers, create career opportunities within the classification, and save the county significant personnel costs. Personnel costs meaning that they are cheaper than deputy sheriffs in the jail. We've asked for that a study be done. And I guess my question to you, when you become sheriff, will you authorize a study of our jails and have experts come into our jails and analyze the structure, civilians versus sworn, and everything else, mental illness, all that stuff?
Right.
Will you authorize a study to be done?
No, absolutely. When you look at the complexity of the environment that we're dealing with, you've got a number of different unions involved. You've got a number of people with their own interests in seeing it done a certain way. You've got the past practices and the history and the investment in the way that it has been done. I want to be able to get some fresh eyes in there, to be able to take a look at it, see what we're doing. Are we doing it as well as it can be done? Are the ratios appropriate? Is the staffing appropriate? Are the numbers appropriate for the environment that people are working in? Are the levels of supervision appropriate for what we're dealing with? And are people being held accountable in the fashion that we would expect or that is being done elsewhere? All of these things are very, very important to the smooth running of the jail and to the image of the department. So I would look forward to bringing in subject matter experts from around the country to take a look at this environment, comparing it with others and making recommendations, and then we'll look at those recommendations, bring the stakeholders together and kick it around amongst us to be able to come up with something that makes the most sense for the environment that we're working in here.
Well, Jim, we welcome you coming in as our next sheriff. We recognize that there are problems in our jail. We're not saying that there are no problems. And we welcome the fresh eyes to come in and for changes to be made for the better, for the safety of inmates as well as safety of our membership. So we welcome you coming in. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
I would like everyone to know that the election is coming in November, and it is important that we get the right sheriff in, and Jim McDonald is the right sheriff. So I encourage everyone to get out and vote. There is a reason why law enforcement is behind Jim. all of law enforcement is behind Jim. There's a reason for that. He's the right man for the job, so please get out there and vote. This has been another segment of Popa on Point. Thank you for joining us. Learn more about us by visiting our website at www.ppoa.com. You can contact us via email at info@ppoa.com or by phone 323-261-3010. You can also connect with us through our Facebook page by searching LA County PPOA or follow us on Twitter @LAPPOA.